Affairs Committee. My name is Reshma Patel, and I'm the Vice Chair of the committee. This meeting is called to order at 6:34 p.m. Tonight, we are joined by Chair Rick Eggers, District Manager Jesus Perez, and Assistant District Manager Brendan Berth. Members of the public, you can raise any questions or comments that you have through the Q&A feature of Zoom. If there is time following the committee's discussion, we will field questions from the public. Jim Collins will take minutes tonight. Thank you, Jim, for volunteering. And as a reminder, if you haven't volunteered for future meetings, please speak to Brendan, and we are always looking for people to take minutes at future meetings. Now we will take roll call attendance. Brendan, will you conduct the roll call?
Committee members, I will call your name and you will unmute yourselves. When your name is called, please say present. I will announce if there is quorum. Jim Collins.
Here.
B. Disman.
Present.
Rick Eggers.
Present.
Eva Marie Lassiter.
Present. Can you hear me?
Yes. Karen Moore. I do not see Karen here. Steve O.
Here.
Reshma Patel.
Here.
Brian Van Nieuwenhoven.
Present.
And Claude L. Winfield.
Present.
We have a quorum.
The agenda for tonight's meeting was distributed ahead of time by the board office and is reflected on the screen before you. If there is no objection, we will adopt the agenda. Members of the committee, if you object to adopting the agenda, you may raise your hand through Zoom now. And Brendan, if you can help me, it's hard for me to see all the hands sometimes.
No problem.
Okay, seeing no objections, the agenda for tonight's meeting is adopted. The minutes from the October 12th meeting of the Budget and Governmental Affairs Committee were distributed ahead of time by the board office. If there is no objection, we will adopt the minutes as drafted. Members of the committee, if you object to adopting the minutes, you may raise your hand through Zoom. Seeing no objections, the minutes from the October 12th meeting are adopted. They will soon be available on the CB6 website. In order to conduct an efficient meeting, let's observe a few ground rules. No one may speak until granted the floor. Committee members, if you have a question about committee business or wish to make a motion, please raise your hand through Zoom. The chat function should not be used for committee business or questions about agenda topics. All such remarks should be made on the record by raising your hand through Zoom. Chat should only be used to alert us of any technical difficulties you are having or to state in writing information like an email address that was already stated aloud on the record during the meeting. When a committee member is given the floor to speak, I will identify you and you can unmute yourself so that you can speak. We are required by New York State law to have a transcript of the meeting, so please keep your questions and comments succinct and germane to the discussion. The order of the adopted agenda will be followed. Tonight, we're going to have a discussion of the New York State Open Meetings Law. And that will consist of a resolution that we had put forth at our last meeting. We had a discussion in October as well as our August meeting. We talked about the need to allow for virtual meetings going forward. And we also have elected representatives that will be speaking to us. Brendan has pulled up the resolution that we had emailed around. You should have all received it again today, and it was discussed, as mentioned, at our October meeting. And as background, in March 2020, when we adopted emergency orders due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the governor allowed for us to have virtual meetings for community boards. In June of 2021, when the emergency orders were lifted, Then, because of the open meetings law, we were unable to continue with virtual meetings until September 1st, when the governor then adopted new legislation, which will allow us to have virtual meetings until January 15th of 2022. In the spring of 2021, Community Board 6 sent a survey to all community board members as well as the public to receive comments and to do a survey as to whether or not we should continue with virtual meetings. It was determined from the survey that participation was greater from the public when we had virtual meetings, as well as it allowed for there to be more diversity on our community board because they allowed for people with busy work schedules or busy family schedules to be able to join the community board meetings. As a result, we put forth this resolution that would allow us to have virtual meetings beyond the January 15th, 2022 expiration date of the existing law. There are two bills in the state assembly and the state senate right now. And tonight we're discussing those two bills and any proposed changes to the resolution that's put forth here. I will open this up to comments from other committee members. I'd like to add, I'd also like to thank Brian, who helped with this resolution, as well as Rick.
Still always
You're
should
welcome.
have.
Did someone have a comment? Or a question? And if we do have the representatives from the elected officials' offices, we can also have them speak.
I see that Jim has his hand raised.
Just to call the question.
So are there any changes to the resolution as shown here?
Do we have any comments from the representatives?
I'd be pleased to speak, I guess, if that's helpful. Assemblymember Gottfried is a co-sponsor of one of the two bills, the one that also has a Senate version. It's going to need to be moved on very quickly once the legislature is back in session in January, obviously. Because it's very unfortunate that the current law lapses on January 15th. It just doesn't give us a lot of time to work with. But I mean, the assembly member is very supportive of the goals in these bills. And I think it's obviously important that we get this onto the floor quickly in both houses before January 15th. I'm not telling anyone anything they don't really know, but I do kind of want to emphasize that time is of the essence here. And we're very hopeful at least to move at least one of these bills in a timely manner, but it's going to be, it's going to take some doing.
Is there been any discussion on which bill? I mean, kind of making one bill for both the House and the Senate?
I would have to defer to Amanda Walwin on that from Dan Court's office. I don't know if there's a Senate sponsor yet. I'm not speaking from any interior knowledge or haven't even discussed this aspect of it. But if it doesn't have a Senate sponsor yet, it's a little bit further behind in the pipeline than the other bill that does seem ready to go, has a number of co-sponsors, has a Senate version. I don't mean to undercut the bill that's been introduced by Assemblymember New and whose co-sponsorship is by Assemblymember Court. It's obviously also an important bill. I wouldn't know if there's an ability to merge those two. I would say this is kind of like going to a short order cook here. We're not going to get, quiche Lorraine. If we need to move this by January 15th, probably don't want to add complications like let's merge two bills, reintroduce them at the very beginning, start all over again, put them into committee, etc. You probably want to go with whatever vehicle can get you to where you need to fastest so you can get your eggs and get out the door. It's a crude metaphor. Again, I'm not speaking from any legislative knowledge. I'm not really legislative staff. I'm based in the district. Live here in Manhattan like all the rest of you. And so, I'm not speaking from expert knowledge here, but with that January 15th deadline looming, we're going to need to probably, if that is a critical goal, which I am guessing, I don't want to speak for the committee members, but I'm guessing that we don't really want to let this situation lapse. We'll go back to where we were and then find the perfect solution 6 months, a year later. But again, I don't want to speak for the committee members. That's a decision or a judgment call to make. There's no reason not to pass resolution supporting both these bills. Like chicken soup, it certainly can't hurt. But I would say probably we want to move on the one that has a Senate sponsor quickly.
Okay, thank you. And Amanda from Assemblymember Court's office, would you like to comment?
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in and, much like Brees, neither of these bills are our bills, so there's only so much that I can share about the process and where they are, but I have not heard anything about Assemblymember News bill getting a Senate sponsor, so I echo everything Brees said. I would guess, and I'm happy to hear if this isn't the case, but I would guess that speed is really what's important to everyone here. So my instinct is that the bill that has moved further along in the process is the one that will move more quickly in the process. And I believe we are a co-sponsor only of the new bill, but we'll get on the Pollen bill as well. And certainly I would love to hear from all of you if there is anything about either of these bills that is preferable, that is better, anything in the language that you think makes your work easier or harder, or if they are both pretty much the same for what you need to get done. And again, while we are not the prime sponsor of either of these bills, happy to take it to the sponsors and let them know, or to connect you with folks from their office so that we can make sure we get this as right as possible for you as quickly as possible, because I think we all know that there is really no need to go back. I apologize for the pets fighting in the background, to go back to a world in which in-person meetings are required for you to do your business. And I think we certainly believe that you know how to use this technology in a way to get your work done in the way that makes the most sense. So we want to give you the freedom to do that. So please, anything that we can do to make these bills better for you, please let me know, and we're happy to do that.
Thank you. And we had invited the sponsors of the bill, and we thought we were going to have representatives. And I know Brendan is checking up on that. So perhaps we will hear from the sponsors of the bill as well before our meeting is adjourned for the evening.
Hi, Reshma. Sorry,
hi.
this is Sam from Senator Hoylman's office. I've been here for a little bit. Sorry I was late. I just wanted to, I just wanted to say hi and see if I can answer any questions, and happy to talk about the bill.
Well, thank you, Sam, for joining. And I'm not sure if you want to add anything to what we just heard from the other offices. And since Senator Hoylman is the sponsor of the bill, if you can tell us a little bit more about where we are in the process and if we'll be able to get this done by January 15th.
Yeah, so, this is one of our top priorities. We've been working closely with CB6 folks and some other community boards because we know it's a really important issue and something that has to be addressed. But, we are off session right now. and the soonest we would be able to move would be January 1st. And, we do have to move through the process. So it is going to be tight, and it's an issue that we know is urgent and time sensitive. So it's something that's going to be very top of mind come the start of session. But we are limited by unless there was an extraordinary session called by the governor, or or otherwise, we would be unable to pass this ahead of time. So that's kind of what's complicating the situation. Yeah, that's basically the update I have right now.
Well, thank you. And I'd just like to add the one other issue, in addition to, as I mentioned earlier, CB6 did a survey where both the public and committee members felt that virtual meetings were helpful for them and it increased participation. The other issue we have is finding a space in our district that's large enough to host our meetings. When we have our full board meetings, there's 50 committee members, and then we want to have enough space for public members to attend, and anyone from the public to attend. And so given that, the pandemic is still going on, while not at the severity as it was before, a lot of the places where we would have our meetings are still practicing social distancing and won't allow for such a large meeting.
No, absolutely. And I mean, there's a plethora of reasons, as you know, safety, space, accessibility, to name a few. So we know this is urgent and time sensitive, and we're gonna do everything in our power to make it move, in a timely fashion in order to be able to make sure this new way of meeting can continue going forward.
Thank you. So in our October meeting, the discussion we had as a committee, we felt that both the bills that are being put forth right now work for our purposes. Are there any committee members who have any other thoughts on this?
I see a few committee members have their hands raised, actually. Rick, B, and Jim all have their hands raised as far as committee members are concerned. I also see Jesus has his hand raised.
Okay, so we'll let Rick speak first, and then we can go in order.
Okay. Yeah, I think if anything, that the Heilman bill covers the most topics. There's an issue with I'm not sure how to pronounce is it NUI? The assembly bill that we have makes it sound like there's a requirement in there that I can't remember what it is right now. But it's a requirement that board members would have to be present for the entire meeting in order for this to work. And that, I think, was just a mistake. I don't think that's intended, but the Senate bill that Senator Hoyland put forth is probably the best. What we've done in our resolution is suggest that the two bills get together, the people doing it, and just get a single bill and get it through as fast as they can. What we can do is if we pass something tonight, we can get it to the community board on Wednesday and hopefully pass something on Wednesday, and that'll list out everything that we've identified, and then we can pass it on to the legislators to act on. There's two more points I wanted to make. One was the most important thing that seemed to be a problem in the previous interpretations is we don't want to have to say that all the remote locations need to be available to everybody, because it was coming down to the way it was originally interpreted, that if somebody was signing in from their home, that their home location would have to become a location that somebody from the public could be able to attend. If we can make sure that the bill, if it has more than one remote location, more than, yes, more than what has a single location for in-person and then remote locations specified where they are, that's sufficient. And that not everybody has to come in, like with the email address, with the login address and all that kind of information. Not that anybody would have to have access to everybody's apartments in New York. The other thing is, I was wondering whether, if there's a time crunch in January, is it possible that the governor could be prevailed upon to do an executive order that would keep the current law in place while the Senate and Assembly act? I don't know if that's possible, but should we be reaching out to the governor's office now to get that result?
I'm not a lawyer, and I'm honestly just not sure. It's possible that that's the kind of powers she only would have had during the declared emergency.
Yeah.
And I believe that, that is technically now over.
Yeah.
But I'm not a lawyer, so I don't know.
Well, but Brees, I think that's why they had to do a legislative extension and not just another executive order extension.
Right, and I'm tempted to say that's the way to go. That's the best, most durable fix. But that may not be the best advice. So I'm not really.
Well,
I don't know.
What I'm suggesting though would be that while we're moving with the legislative solution, if there's something that the governor could do to keep everything in place, maybe we just need to look into that.
I can try to find out, but I can't guarantee I can get a good answer for you.
Yeah, thanks.
Right.
Okay, that's it for me.
Jesus, did you want to add something?
Yes, actually, so at the most recent Borough Service Cabinet, Manhattan Borough Service Cabinet, the borough president, who works with an organization called Beta NYC, indicated that organization has been working with some state level stakeholders, and that there might be an appetite for such a legislative extension of the ability that lets us meet on Zoom right now. So it may not be a bad idea to perhaps include in one of your resolves for this resolution to, if this is not resolved by January 15th, to please extend this thing for 6 more months or another year or something like that, to give folks the opportunity to hash all this out. Because, 2 weeks in January, it's gonna, as has been said already, it's gonna be tight. There was, in theory, some sort of willingness to do a borough board resolution. I suggested such a resolution to the Borough Service Cabinet a couple months ago. I have not seen them really move on that. And given that the borough president's on their way out and a new one on the way in, I don't know whether we can expect that. But what I would suggest is, being explicit in the resolution that the community board or the particular public body that is having a meeting should be allowed to decide whether they have it all in person, all online, or both. One of the concerns that I saw in the Hoylman bill is that while it takes out language of the from the open meetings law that requires the board to, when they're using Zoom, to provide an opportunity to attend, say in a member's living room, for example. It takes that language out, which is good. It leaves language in that says that public bodies shall make or cause to be made reasonable efforts to ensure that meetings are held in appropriate facilities that can adequately accommodate members of the public who wish to attend. And it means in person. So either language can be added to that says, but only when meetings are happening in person, because if it allows us to meet in Zoom, but the Committee on Open Government, which is not the most imaginative and, in my experience, not particularly interested in innovating or helping, small community boards meet their requirements in a safe way, they're going to be like, okay, well, now you can meet on Zoom, but you also have to meet in person. It seems to defeat the purpose, especially if we're still battling with public health emergencies. So it seems like whatever, perhaps the Hoyman bill, since that one seems to be further along, if amendments can be made to it to make it super clear that nothing in these new changes will obligate a body to meet in person if it chooses to only meet online, I think that would be very helpful.
Suze, that's a great point. Thanks for highlighting that. Would you be able to send me an email with that detail, the line of the law that you think needs to be changed? And I'll work with the team to see what we can do.
If the committee doesn't find it inappropriate, I can.
Yeah, and I think that it's that language we should incorporate into our resolution, right? Because if that's a change that we as a committee want to have, we should, rather than right now where we say that we want the Assembly and the State Senate to work together to adopt one of these bills, we should say we want them to adopt the Senate bill with this changed language.
Sure.
Got it. Yeah, I'm happy to go whatever is the most appropriate way.
Yeah, so I think that's how we're happy to send you that language too, but I think that, what Jesus says, we as a committee should vote on and incorporate into our resolution. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
B, and then Jim, you guys had
So
comments.
I had 3 comments. One, I like to add to the resolution the potential of the governor, given the timing of what is going to take place in the Assembly and the Senate, to see if we could recommend an extension while the Senate and the Assembly deliberate that. I don't think we lose anything by putting that in. I also support the additional language that Jesus said to put that in. But I did have one question on the impact of other rules on meetings during this period of time. And so if you have the question that we're all dealing with, certainly I'm dealing with it with my offices, of needing to see proof of vaccination, needing to see identity, masking. Would those types of things apply, because they're indoor meetings, if we have them in person, as long as the city has rules to that effect?
Yeah, I mean, all indoor events that I've gone to now since we passed the law is you get vaccination checks with ID.
So that puts more of a focus on why you really need to do video meetings and Zoom, because you're not excluding the group of people that are unvaccinated. I think as long as you have those rules, you also need the ability to do remote meetings.
What we've heard from the city, because obviously, back when we thought we had to have in-person meetings, one of the operational concerns was, what do we do with proof of vaccination and masks and all that? And it was around that time that it was emerging that indoor dining was coming back so long as you were vaccinated and things like that. The city was not very accommodating with insisting that proof of vaccination be shown to attend a public meeting. And many, many times we reached out to the community affairs unit at the mayor's community affairs unit and got no response. Or we got essentially the response that we should cancel meetings or reschedule or figure it out on our own, essentially. And we kept telling them, listen, you need to show proof of vaccination to go have dinner, to go see a show, to go to the gym, but to participate in, a civic meeting, the city was reluctant to say that, yes, you can insist that people show proof of vaccination, that you can insist that they wear masks, and even if we do insist that they wear masks, how do we police that? We've seen, so there are a lot of issues that the city seems not as willing to help community boards on as it is to say, help businesses on. So I'm not
Right, so
hopeful.
Jesus, so that's why, Jesus, you really need to emphasize the need for video meetings if you can't do that, because this would be, public meetings would be the only large group. I mean, if you go to the theater, you go to restaurants, even diners are checking what we're doing, and you're going to let a public meeting with a grouping of people that we don't even distance because of the numbers. It really does seem to have more of a health problem than the city is willing to admit.
So thank you. I want to just let everyone know that Assemblymember Harvey Epstein is on, and he has a limited amount of time. So I'd just like to let him speak, and we can go back to Jim and B if you have any additional comments, so that we can hear from the Assembly member. Harvey? Brendan, do you know, I thought I saw Harvey here.
Just a moment.
Is Jesus on everybody else's screen at the moment?
No.
Okay.
Okay,
He's
Yeah,
frozen
Rex,
on
I'm
mine.
sorry. I think I got it frozen there for a second.
Oh, yeah, no, yeah, that's like I saw you and then I didn't see you, so I wasn't sure what happened.
Yeah, I think my Wi-Fi just cut out for a second there.
Well, thank you for joining, Harvey. And if you, I don't know how much of the discussion you heard, but you know, we are discussing a resolution to the open meetings law to make sure that we can pass January 15th, 2022, continue to have virtual meetings. And we had asked our representatives to just give us an update. And, you know, we heard from Assembly Member Gottfried's office, Assemblymember Court's office, and from Senator Hoylman's office already.
Yeah, and so everyone talked about the hearing that we had 2 weeks ago on the Assembly side, talking about this open meetings and kind of really feeling like that we need to have a mixed approach to it. There's a lot of sense out there that after January 15th, we want to have people to appear. There's a lot of push to have meetings so where you can appear in person and or appear remotely. I know that wasn't the conversation we were just having, but that's been a big push statewide. That people feel like some people can just join by Zoom, but some people don't have capacity. So they want to make sure that there's a in-person meeting opportunity. So I think that's the reality of what we've been hearing around the state. So I just want to put that on people's radars. I understand the issues of not being able to know who's in the room and vaccinations, and that's a issue that we're going to have to grapple with. And maybe that is something separate we can manage outside of the open meetings law legislation. But I'm concerned about people's health, and I know a CB3 meeting happened where people were tested positive in August of this year. We don't want that to expose people who are volunteers to COVID. So I think we're going to have to balance both issues and figure out how we can have meetings in the city, have some proof of vaccination required for people to attend, and people who can't prove that, maybe they can attend online. But we're going to have to grapple with both issues together.
Well, thank you, Harvey. So we hadn't heard about the meeting on the assembly floor 2 weeks ago. So that's good to know. I mean, my question is, I can understand, you know, in certain meetings where people would want there to be a public space for people to show up. And does there have to be one, you know, blanket rule for everyone? Or could we have a distinction for community boards where we are having this issue of not even being able to find space that's large enough to host us, and not having funding for us to have a space in our community where we can have our meetings?
Yeah, so honestly, at the hearing on the 15th, that issue didn't come up as much. And so if the board here wanted to draft the resolution talking about that, I think the response would be then the city should pay for it, and the city should help you find spaces. But I do think that's a real issue. I know that CB6 and CB3 faced, right in August after the executive order expired in June of this year. So I think in the resolution, there should be three things. One is you should decide how you feel about the in-person meeting requirements for members, for board members. Two, the virtual option for members and for the public. And three is kind of what the issue with the space. Some people have been saying, well, why can't a board member attend via Zoom as long as there are quorum for people who are there in person. Some people are saying, well, why can't there just be an in-person and a virtual option as long as there's a Zoom in total? I think you guys have to, I think that's digging a little deeper than you are. I think the legislation doesn't really go there as far enough as we're going to need to go based on what happened at the hearing 2 weeks ago.
Okay, thank you.
Does that make sense to you, Rashma, what I'm saying?
Yes, no, it does make sense.
So I think if you could decide those points, it would be
Yes.
helpful. Because I do think some people are going to be on the side saying, well, if you're a board member, then you should be in there in person. I'm not sure we want that. And I think that's an option that we should discuss and then take a position on, or you should take a position on.
Yeah.
And then the question is, should there be any in person at all? I think it's likely that any in person at all will be a requirement of whatever we pass next year.
Yes, no, that makes sense. So, and we will try to address those issues in our resolution. Any committee members have any questions? I know, Jim, you had your hand up if you want to speak, if anyone else has any specific questions for Assemblymember Epstein.
I do. I just wanted to point out that the resolution that we're going to be considering does suggest that any member of the board who is on a video connection should be counted towards quorum. So it's not just the people who are present in a physical meeting, it's the people who are there as well through video conferencing. Because it could, the kind of restrictions, kind of limitations on being able to attend apply equally to board members as they do to members of the public. We could have some people who are not vaccinated. We could have people who are sick, and the only other way that they can attend, but they could still attend the meeting. So anyway, that's part of the resolution that we're going to be addressing both later in the meeting and on Wednesday.
And just Rick, I didn't see a provision that in this, what I've been reading, that requires an in-person requirement at all. Is that your position, that there doesn't need to be any in-person?
I don't, you're correct, Harvey. It's not in the resolution. And maybe we do need to say something about that, but I don't think we've said in any other discussion that we couldn't have a meeting that had no physical location.
Yeah, and I'll just be honest, we've heard a lot from advocates that are really pushing back on that, saying that excludes the whole population who doesn't have the technology and who want to attend. So we've heard a lot on that point.
Okay. Well, let's see, maybe we do have it.
Yeah, we don't clearly address it because I think we need to be more clear on that we would want the option to have an all virtual meeting.
Yeah.
Well, I think, Reshma, that's going to be a losing argument. And I understand that why you'd want that. But I think if you haven't like to take a position that we want only all virtual meetings, I think good government groups who already spoke at the hearing and have been public about it feel like that's not good public policy.
I would add the news media is also very upset about it. The news media is very angry that Mayor de Blasio is still not holding in-person briefings, for example, although it's obviously not an official public meeting. But the media wants to be in the room when public meetings are going on, and they want them back as soon as possible.
Okay, thank you. That's very helpful to know.
I see that both Jim and B have their hands raised.
Okay, I'll let Jim speak because he's been waiting for some time.
Jim, you are currently muted. You're on mute. Okay, Jim, you're still on mute. Let me see if I can work with Jim to make sure.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
maybe we go to B and come
Unmuted.
back.
yeah, we'll give the floor to B.
Thanks. So I did want to comment on what was just said about public meetings. So I actually think flexibility should be given to the holder of the meeting, depending on the meeting, the issue of room, the issue of what kind of validation you could do. You don't want another event of the virus. Unfortunately, we're going into January, and that's going to be a difficult period of time. So I think while we could articulate in the resolution that there will be, depending on the circumstances, that the availability of face-to-face meetings may be selected, but the option would basically stay with the community board and the chair, given the subjects. I am very concerned hearing what was just said, that it will take up whether you're vaccinated, a separate type of situation. I think a number of board members and members of the public have immune system problems. You're actually endangering people's health. I understand good government. I work for government, but I actually think you have to be realistic with the pandemic that's still going to be here on the coming year.
Thank you,
Yeah, if I
B.
can just clarify that, the point is the open meetings law issue will be taken care of in the open meetings law. If you wanted to deal with people coming into a meeting, whether they're vaccinated or not, will be a separate issue. So you have to deal with them separately as separate legislation. Whether the state is going to do that or not is a different question. And whether it's good public policy is a different question. But I'm saying that there's likely to be a situation where they're going to require meetings to be held in person and potentially hopefully have a virtual option. And I think it's unlikely that the state is going to give the discretion to a community board to decide whether the meeting will be in person or virtual.
Thank you, Harvey. Is Jim able to speak now?
Looks like Jim is off at the moment,
Okay.
but if I see him and I see his hand raised, I will make sure to flag that.
Okay, thank you, Brendan. I don't see any other hands up. Do you see any other hands, Brendan?
No, I do not.
Well, Reshma, follow up.
Actually, I do see.
Sorry.
Oh,
Sorry, I was just saying, I just saw Rick's hand raised.
okay, Rick, you have the floor.
I just wanted to point out that there's a whereas provision in the draft resolution we're looking at that at least nods at what the kind of thing that Harvey's bringing up. And it's to allow, let's see, provisions of the Senate and Assembly bills aim for the same goal to allow fully remote meetings and meetings that have a central in-person physical location plus remote access to provide equitable access to meetings for those who do not have access to the required electronic devices, for example, personal computers, smartphones, tablets, and also to provide flexible meeting options for conducting meetings during health emergencies, weather events, and other dangerous conditions. We could put a parallel resolved in there if we need to, or we can expand on that whereas to make sure that it's clear that we can, well, I guess I don't have a position on whether we should have a virtual option only. I think Harvey's probably right that we're not going to get away with it, but we can certainly put it in the resolution if we want to.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we had in our prior meeting, we did have a discussion on the, and I think Jesus is the person who spent the most time looking into this, is trying to do the combined, virtual meeting, in-person meeting. And the logistics of that is not as easy as one would assume, or as easy as I would have assumed. And that's why we kind of put this language in, we're having an all virtual option. But I
No,
think
I
we can
think-
discuss that further.
Yeah, I think if there's a technology issue with doing all
Yeah.
a mixed meeting, you should say it, Rashma. You
Yeah.
should say what the complications are, what the costs are, why, I think you need to kind of give those details. So when people like Brad and Dick and I go back to Albany, we can have like ammunition from our community boards behind us.
Yeah, so we will do that.
Great. All right, I
Careful.
gotta jump off.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Rick. What?
No, I just don't want to I don't want to overpromise on that. We have our resolution that has to be passed on Wednesday. So getting that together
Okay.
by Wednesday, we might be able to follow it up with additional information after the resolution. I just didn't want to
Yeah, we're not voting till January, so you have plenty of time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, well, thank you, Harvey.
Sure, Rashma. See you all soon. Take care.
Bye. And I still don't see Jim. Brendan, do you?
No, I do not.
Okay. Perhaps he had to go ahead of technical difficulty. So do we need the other assembly member in the state senator's offices members to stay, or should we let them leave if they have other things to attend to?
I don't know if any committee members have any other questions for Amanda from Assemblymember Court's office, or Brees from Assemblymember Gottfried's office, or Sam from Senator Hoylman's office. I see B has her hand raised, but I don't know if it's for any of those elected officials' offices.
Oh, it is not. I was going to go to the resolution and some modifications.
Yep. I could ask. What kind of attention is this going to get between now and the end of the calendar year in the various elected officials' offices? I mean, are you going to be able to have are you going to have a chance to look at this, do you think?
When you say-
Hello?
Do you mean when you say
Hello?
this?
Yeah,
I was asking about
Hello?
whether the elected officials' offices. Yes, we hear you, Eva Marie.
So, so if you're talking about the resolution, we're gonna have enough time to read it. Of course, we would be voting in January when the session, legislative session begins. So, this is one of our priorities in our office. So anything that you put together will be reviewed and considered in our office, definitely.
Okay.
Jim is back and unmuted.
okay.
Hi, Reshma. I apologize. My computer cut out. It froze on Jesus, and then it went blank. I could hear the audio. I couldn't see the screen. I couldn't unmute. My point that I wanted to raise was, well, two things. I think that the governor probably has sufficient police powers to extend the open meetings law by virtual means. Particularly, I saw Mark Levine, the incoming borough president, said that cases are rising in New York State. That's the first comment. And the second comment is, unless it's already been moved, I would like to move to adopt the resolution as changed or proposed to be changed here. Is there a second?
I was going to second it, Jim, with the 2 amendments that we made.
Right.
Okay, any other? Okay. Rick, were you going to say something?
Yeah, can we at least review before we go to that? Can we just review with the 2 points that B was mentioning? One would be something about asking that there be a backup, that the governor take
Right.
action to extend if the legislature
Yeah, I
hasn't
would
been
say,
able to
Rick,
act.
yeah, I would say, Rick, since the legislature is not coming back to January, we would propose that the governor extend the existing policy for at least until June or something to give her a 6-month period. Because I really think this won't be the first thing that they will take up. There'll be many other issues for New York. So I didn't think we could leave it open-ended, but if you give it at least 6 months, I think that would be pretty effective. So that was the only modification I was going to put on the governor.
Okay. And what was the second one?
I mocked up that language. If it helps, I can put it in the chat.
Yes, that would be great, Jesus.
And then Jesus mentioned the second language. Jesus, I can't remember it. And I
That one
agreed with you.
I've been sort of workshopping while you guys have been talking. That was there's a lot to it, so I've tried my best. This is not what I'm happy with, but I put it in the chat. I can read both. The suggestion that the amendment that B made would read something along the lines of, be it further resolved that Manhattan Community Board 6 requests that the legislature extend for 1 year Part E of Chapter 417 of the laws of 2021, which amended Article 7 of the Public Officers Law and allowed public bodies like community boards to meet virtually until January 15, 2022.
Nice.
Okay.
That's good.
That's good. Yeah, that's
And
good.
then mine is a little bit rougher, so I need to, or you guys can massage it or I can massage it, but be it further resolved that Manhattan Community Board 6 requests state legislators to amend language in the open meetings law, such as section 103, subdivision D of the open meetings law, I mean to say, that suggests that an in-person option is required even if a virtual option is allowed.
Yeah.
I think we need to flesh that out a little bit more, but that's sort of what we were saying.
Yeah. It needs to be stated a little more positively as opposed to, I mean, this is almost like, stating the negative. I think if we can get it, just flip it around, you got the essence is there.
Yeah, I would want to add perhaps also detail, Jesus, as we've discussed before, the difficulties of having this, perhaps mentioning the situation where we may not have the space, as well as a hybrid situation is also, the technical abilities to do that.
Well, those would be things I imagine that would go in whereas clauses, right? Because,
Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
So, and I didn't participate in the writing of the reso, so I can look at it tonight and tomorrow morning and sort of, maybe stick a whereas clause or two in there.
Yep, Jesus, just and I did participate in the resolution. So let's talk. Why don't we do that? Talk tomorrow about it. That'll also give it a little bit more committee member input, so it doesn't look like it's coming entirely from the district manager.
Sure.
Yeah, but I think this part could easily be just to amend the language so that it allows a virtual option, an option for all virtual participation.
Yeah.
Without a physical location specified. Under unusual circumstances, I mean, we can make it look a little bit like it's not going to happen very often, but it could.
Well, I phrased it that way because I know Sam, Sam Vasquez from Senator Hoylman's office, he did ask for like specific citations of where problematic language might be.
That is helpful.
What we can do is maybe blend the language out, and then as far as we can give Senator Hoylman's office, an email, for example, with more specific citations of language that may be problematic.
Yep.
Yep, I think that's a really good idea to do that.
Yeah, I agree.
So thank you, Jesus. So I think that in terms of our two resolves we want to add, I mean, I think this language is good, unless committee members have a comment on it, and we can massage it and make it work better before we present it at the Wednesday full board meeting. Does anyone have any objections to that? We've had a motion to move on this resolution. Brendan, do you see any hands up? I don't see any, so I just want to make sure.
I see Jim's hand up.
Just to call the question.
I seconded.
Okay, so this resolution has been called to question with the two proposed amendments. Brendan, would you like to take a vote?
Yes.
I'm sorry. We really, just to follow procedure, we have to vote on the amendments separately from the, we can't just say as amended unless it's
Okay.
actually been amended.
Yeah.
So if we can bundle the two changes into one motion to amend, and the amendment would be to add two resolved paragraphs.
I don't think it's necessary, but I mean,
Yes, it is. He's correct.
Yeah,
because my intention in making the resolution was moving the resolution was to include the amendment as well.
But it's not just an editorial, so he's virtually correct. You should amend it first.
Okay, if that's okay, I'd like to, let's do, I move that we amend the resolution by adding two resolved paragraphs as outlined in the chat section.
I second it.
All right, thank you. Brendan, can you take a vote on including the amendments?
No, just the amendments.
Just the amendments, yes.
Jim Collins,
Support.
B. Disman,
Support.
Rick Eggers,
Yes.
Eva Marie Lassiter,
Support.
Karen Moore,
Yes.
Steve O,
Yes.
Reshma Patel,
Yes.
Brian Van Nieuwenhoven.
Brian had put in the chat that he
Oh,
had.
that's right. That's right. He's left. Claude L. Winfield.
Yes.
Okay. So
Unanimous.
Now we go to,
nobody opposed.
Okay, and now does someone want to make a motion to approve the resolution?
I already did.
I second it.
Okay, and Brendan, if you can take a vote.
Yes. When I call your name, please say whether you are in favor, opposed, abstain, or abstain for cause. Jim Collins.
Can we just ask whether there's objection? Because I think we're unanimous.
Jim.
Collins, all right, approved, geez.
E. Disman,
Support.
Rick Eggers,
in favor.
Eva Marie Lassiter,
Support.
Karen Moore,
Yes.
Steve O,
Yes.
Reshma Patel,
In favor.
and Claude L. Winfield.
Yes.
With 8 in favor, nobody opposed, abstaining, or abstaining for cause, the resolution passes.
Thank you. I do not have a chair's report. I don't know, Rick, if you have anything you'd want to add?
No. I would appreciate any suggestions for the December meeting agenda. I don't think that we have, if we don't have any items, we just won't have a meeting in December. But if you have something that I'm overlooking, please bring it to my attention.
Thank you, Rick. And does anyone have any old or new business?
New business,
Yes, Jim?
October 31st or thereabouts, the controller printed a his comprehensive annual report for the city of New York. This showed city pension funds had done quite well during the pandemic, thanks mostly to the Federal Reserve, I think. But what it did was it fleshed up a number of the city pension funds so that there are now, I forget the number, I think it's 90-something% funded. Given that, and given that we have a new controller coming in, and perhaps Rick, for this could be a discussion for next month, I would like to propose that we as a community board suggest that the incoming controller, Mr. Lander, reduce the presumed discount rate on the city pension funds to match the 5.9% rate from the 7% rate it is now, to match that of the New York state pension fund that the controller there adopted. He's got a fresh slate. This will substantially reduce the risk. New York City has had 7% for the last couple of years, even as the state had reduced its discount rate to 6%. This would give him a fresh start. He will have, he won't have to engage, he won't have to chase yield, as it were. I think it makes a good deal of sense for us to suggest that to him. We have tremendous fiscal issues coming before the city in the next several years. We have $118 billion in other post-employment benefits, OPEB they're called, that are entirely unfunded. And that's 118% of the current city budget. If you add that, plus you add the if you reduce the presumed interest rate on the city pension funds now from 7% to 6%, which is a required disclosure in the annual financials, you end up with an additional $35 billion of pension liability. I don't think that's terribly significant in the scheme of things, given that we had a good year, but it also allows the controller to rein in some of the more risky investments that he has or that are currently in the portfolio. I mean, we all saw what happened in China with I forget the name of the company now, wasn't able to pay its bonds off. We're at the top of the market right now, and if we keep chasing yield, it will be we risk pension principal considerable amounts by trying to chase to a 7% yield, because the things that we invest in, although they are investment grade goes over a span of items, including items that are just one click, as it were, above junk bonds. So I think this is a reasonable proposal for the incoming controller, and I think it would be a good issue for us to discuss in December.
So Rick has his hand up, but Jim, I wanted to mention that last spring when the trustees met of the pension funds, they actually voted to lower the rate from below 7%, not at the same rate. It's still higher than the state's rate. And so I don't know what happened with that, but it's something to look into, and I'll look into that.
That would be wonderful. I mean, private pensions, as you probably know, are required to use a pension rate of only currently about 3.5%. And it's disingenuous, I think, to keep telling our public employees, these people that we ask to go save our lives or take bullets on the street, to presume that their retirement years will be funded when they won't be, because we know that. I mean, 7%, Mayor Bloomberg said, if somebody gives you a 7% yield for the rest of your life, which is what the 7% compounded annual growth rate presumption is. If somebody gives you 7% for the rest of your life, be sure to take it and make sure the guy's name isn't Bernie Madoff. So there you go.
I mean, I would add that the city's plan, though, is a defined pension plan. So we're required to make those payments. And it really is going to be a hit on the city's budget.
Yes, it will.
Yeah,
It
because
absolutely
legally we're
will.
obliged. Legally, we're obliged to make the payments to the
You
retirees.
are, absolutely are. And that's why I'm saying, reduce the risk. Reduce the risk. Get away from this 7% chasing yield. Because I've seen stuff, I mean, I haven't seen the entire portfolio in a couple of years now, but there was stuff in there, you know, I wouldn't put my mother in it. I wouldn't put my dog in it, frankly. But he's, you know, to get 7%, that's what you have to do. So that's my view. And I think it's a
Rick?
reasonable effort for us as a community board, as a budget committee. Yeah, go
I'll
ahead.
let Rick has his hand up and he is the chair of the committee. So I wanted to just, and it's a suggestion for December topic.
The city pension fund I've resisted talking about this for years now, because I don't know that we have the expertise to get into this sufficiently. I would not be adverse to having some kind of forum where these issues are discussed that we would sponsor. But to get to the point where the question would be, after discussing these issues, what would happen? And if we were going to come to a resolution that recommended a particular course of action in this field, I think we would be talking through our hats. I don't think we'd really, I don't think we can muster in a relatively short period of time sufficient expertise to address the kind of issues that clearly both Reshma and Jim have. I would not put it on an agenda item for next month unless it was in the terms of what we would be doing other than a resolution. I could see if we want to talk about it in some way, if we want to have guest speakers, if we want to sponsor some kind of discussion from including the independent budget office, that would be something that I could certainly support.
Just to clarify on that, Rick, when I raised this with the several years ago with the Citizens Budget Committee, I told him, you know, look at this, we have this severe underfunding. You know what he told me? He said, yeah, but if we lower the rate, we're going to have to cut spending elsewhere. Give me a break, you know?
Yeah.
What I would suggest is that perhaps we invite the city's actuary for a discussion and ask her to explain why the city's assumed pension rate is 7% when the rate for the state is 5.9%. And actually, I believe should be much lower. But I mean, we've had a 10-year, over the last decade, we've had the 10-year just barely touch 3% for a moment, as it were. And mostly it's been down below 2%. So everything that you add on top of that is risk to principal. So I would invite her and ask her to explain how she came to her 7% number. And again, this is discretionary by the controller. It's not, you know, it's an entirely political decision.
That's exactly why I would like to stay away from it as a topic.
But we represent people.
There's more to discuss. We can discuss this outside of the meeting.
I think it's an important thing that we need to pursue. And you know, I've felt that way for a number of years.
Yeah, I know you
we've had an incumbent controller for the last 12 years? I forget how many years. 8 years. 8 years. And the predecessor did pretty much the same. And I think it's time to make the change with an incoming controller and let that incoming controller take the benefit, it's to his advantage as a politician to not risk pension assets.
Yeah.
B has her hand up.
Yeah,
Oh.
I was going to say, I understand the rates and what actuaries do. I just think that this is better for a discussion of experts in the field rather than what we think should be done. I know actuary, I work with my actuaries, but I would hesitate to be determined to be an expert to speak on this. So Rick, I think it's a very interesting subject. I think it's something that you don't greet someone when they're first coming into office. But I think if we want to put on a panel discussion later on and get experts to talk about the returns, it might be a focus on what the issue is. But I would be hesitant with us just to take up the issue.
My view on that is we should strike while the iron's hot, while the pensions are well funded relative to prior years. Last year we were $45 billion underfunded. I think now we are $9 billion underfunded. So it makes, time to make the change now makes much more sense in my view.
Okay.
Eva Marie has her hand up.
Can I speak now?
Yes.
Mhm.
I wanted to know if on this issue it would help if there were more than one community board that would be addressing this issue, possibly Community Board 5, that we have done things in conjunction with. If they have a similar Budget and Governmental Affairs Committee, would it help if there were more than one, as I say, one committee and one community board that would be addressing the new controller on this issue, rather than having panels which may take more and more time? I know this issue has been discussed several times in several years before, so I just wanted to know if that would be a type of format that could possibly be effective.
You mean at Borough Board or someplace?
I'm sorry, what did you say?
You mean at Borough Board or something of that nature?
I mean that if Community Board 5, which I know that we've done things jointly with in the past, if they have a similar committee like ours, would it help in terms of two community boards addressing this and it's being presented in some way to the incoming controller, rather than having panels where it seems to be that it will be just more and more and more discussion?
I certainly would. I don't have a problem in having us approach some of the other boards to see whether they're interested in the topic, whether they find it appropriate, and how they'd like to address it. I can talk to Kyle about that.
Thank you.
Sure.
I don't see any other hands up, I think. Brendan, do you?
No, I do not.
Yeah. I'd just like to add one thing, that this issue of the assumed interest earnings rate on the pensions is not something that other people have not brought up to the incoming controller. And it is something that is on his radar. And I think that, obviously us advocating for something is important, but I just wanted to let Jim and others know that. If there's no other business, I think we can adjourn the meeting. Rick?
I forgot to mention this before. I think the discussion happened before we actually started the taping for the meeting. And that's that we've been testing out closed captioning.
Oh, yeah.
Jim, I think were you the one who brought this to our attention? And
yeah. Well, no, the transcript, yeah.
I brought it up.
I'm sorry. Claude brought up the possibility of having closed captioning to be more inclusive for those people who couldn't participate in any other way. And I just wanted to point out that we have been testing it out today. Seems to be, from my point of view, it's working pretty well. It didn't cost us anything more, and I don't see why we shouldn't do it. My only question is, should we make a formal recommendation? I can take it to exec next week and suggest that everyone do it. I don't know if we need a resolution, but that's something that we can do.
That actually, since you raised that, it reminds me of a note I sent this morning. We have a, we have an entire transcript of the meeting that's available to us. And I'm wondering if perhaps doing minutes for each meeting is redundant. I did minutes just recently for the over the weekend for the land use committee, and there was two fairly lengthy presentations, and it made more sense, frankly, to reference the transcript of the discussion than the make summaries of what I thought they intended. And I would suggest that executive committee consider the possibility that we consider the transcript and the video log of these meetings to be the minutes. You can search out what you need if you're interested in a particular subject, and just do away with the written minutes per se, and treat the transcript as the minutes of the meeting. I mean, that's what most bodies do, is they treat a transcript as minutes. Most.
May I say something, Jim?
Yep. Yep.
And I'm sorry, it's been so long, I forgot the process. That's why I'm asking. From my point of view, it's a lot easier to read a page and a half of dense text than it is to scroll through a 1.5 hour meeting. This meeting is probably going to be 90 minutes. And I do agree that if you wanted exquisite detail, you could listen to the video or the recording, but that if you wanted an overview of what happened, the minutes themselves would be helpful.
I see that both Jesus and Rick have their hands raised.
Okay, and thank you, Karen. So Jesus, do you want to go, and then Rick? Yeah.
Thank you. This same point has been raised a couple of times, most recently at last month's exec. Unfortunately, the open meetings law will not permit such a practice. The open meetings law does say that minutes have to be created for every public meeting. And it spells out what minutes need to look like. The minutes for the open meetings law are a little briefer than what we normally put together. I think the practice that CB6 has undertaken, the thinking behind that is that if you're going to go through the trouble of putting together minutes, put them together with some detail so that if 2 years down the line you are reading them, they tell you something. But as far as Robert's rules or even the open meetings law is concerned, minutes don't need to have anywhere near that level of detail. But having a video and a transcript double as the meeting minutes will not fly as far as the open meetings law is concerned. It considers them separate things.
Rick?
Yeah, I was, one of the things that I've always supported is very brief minutes. According to Robert's rules, there are certain categories that you need to have, which would be, where it happened, what time it was, who attended, and then votes that are taken in the meeting. Getting into the discussion is not only not required, it's not recommended. So what I would envision, as long as we're going to be doing transcripts, I think Jim has a good point that the details are in the transcript, but we can have the minutes be in effect a kind of index where the essential points are made, and then someone can go to the transcript for the greater discussion of that particular item if they choose to. So, I'd be happy to, Jim, if you want to run by me a way to cut back on it.
That's actually how I did the land use minutes for each of the presentations. I used the timestamp on the presentations, when they started, when they ended, and put that as a detail in the minutes so that people could just go look at them. And then when an issue actually came to a vote, I detailed that, of course, but I think, trying to explain something, especially when it's done with a PowerPoint presentation, and do it in minutes is absurd, especially when you have the ability to do things more efficiently.
Robert's rules would probably say
I have to read it.
There was then a PowerPoint just presentation on such and such a topic, period.
Yeah.
And then the vote was this. So I think I'd much prefer to go that way, but with the full board, it might be a little different. But for the committee meetings, I think we can certainly do that. And particularly if we have a transcript that we can refer to.
Yeah, and hopefully, if you see C-SPAN, you ever watch C-SPAN, or on your screen, on your computer screen, they have a clipping service that you're able to use. But one of the things that it allows is you can word search any particular argument. If whatever, let's say you want to talk Mitt Romney and the infrastructure bill, okay, and you're concerned about how much is spent on the chargers for electric vehicles. You can search out those word combinations, just do some Boolean algebra, and you pull it up, and there it is. And you can see the video. You can see the words as well. So I don't know that ability is on the Zoom meetings. Hopefully they will incorporate it. I think also it's important when we have these kind of discussions that people identify, and actually for the entire discussion, that the chairs recognize people by their full name, so that is recorded on the transcript as well.
That's probably a good point.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, no, thank you, Jim. That was a good point, because sometimes we only use the first name, and if people are going to use that as the official transcript.
Yep. All set. I move adjournment.
We can adjourn, and the meeting is adjourned at 7:57 p.m.
Very good.
Thank you.
All right,
Thank you. Have a good night,
Thank you.
everybody.